So, Your Excellency, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. Now, this is a time we're dealing with things most people would never have seen in their whole life, the health risks, the risks to the economy. When did you first realise just how serious this was going to be, and what did you do?
Annelise, well, thank you for the opportunity today. I think, like most Australians, we came through the bushfire period to the end of January, and as it started to slow down, gave a big sigh of relief. And then all of a sudden the sort of news started building up about this virus and its impact overseas. I think, like most Australians, until we started talking about, we need to close down the way we behave and interact with each other and so forth, then the penny really started to drop, because as soon as businesses was going to slow down, you knew the economy would take a hit, and people would begin to find both the constraints on life difficult, and we start then sort of trying to divine what the future looks like if this goes any longer.
So what was the first thing you do? I know you work with a lot of charities, different groups in Australia. What was your first response?
Well, we sat down and sort of realised fairly quickly that our program is built around engagement with the public. Of course, the constitutional responsibilities are critical, but 90% of what Linda and I do is engagement with the public. So that's either here at Government House, Admiralty House, or travelling around Australia. That was going to not be possible. So we started saying, okay, what are the other tools we have now to reach out to people to check how they're faring? And that was really the important thing, to start getting a sense of how the constraints that have been put on our lives were affecting organisations doing their work. So we came up with our virtual outreach program, a lot of phone calls, meetings on different types of virtual platforms, video messaging and so on, and built a package around that, which we just put into effect over the last 6 weeks or so.
I hear you've been doing some virtual boxing sessions.
Yes, that was fun. That was with Canberra PCYC. They have a program there. Of course, the kids can't gather, so again, how do you keep young children engaged, particularly those in a vulnerable period of their life? And so boxing with them was great fun. You feel a bit awkward, standing in a paddock by yourself looking at a TV screen, boxing away, but it was good.
Were you actually punching at that point?
Oh yes, we're doing all those things.
Just the air, or?
Yeah. Shadow boxing. Yeah. And the kids were much better than I was, and very good instructed. And it was a fun session, and it kept them engaged, and while they're engaged, they're just getting reinforcing messages about behaviour, about fun, about responsibility. So it was a good idea.
Now, we're looking at the recovery period from what has been a pretty extraordinary shutdown for so many people. What do you think is the most important thing for us to be focusing on?
Well, as I've been watching this and thinking about it over the last already 2 months, 3 big thematic areas are there, of course. It's our health response, an integrated health response, an integrated economic response, and an integrated social response. So those 3 have got to march together as we go into the future. Of course, we would like, I think, from the government perspective, and again, I'm not the policy expert on these issues, but from the government's perspective, getting people back to work is absolutely critical. And the sooner we can do that, the better. We don't want this to run on, because the social impact that we know already is going to be difficult, and the longer people are unemployed or the economy can't employ them, the difficulties will continue.
And that social aspect is so key. People have felt really isolated in this time. They've been under extraordinary stress. What do you think we need to make sure we do to address the social issues?
I've spoken to, as I said, numerous charities, particularly those who work in the social delivery of social services or care for people who have been isolated. There's a great concern about keeping that connection with people. Mental health is obviously a big concern for us into the future. There's data out today with the projections modelling that our suicide rate could possibly increase, particularly youth suicide. So we need to be very, very concerned about that, as we are, I believe, and be again looking at what programs we've got, what needs to be reinforced, what needs to be introduced to re-establish contact and get those people into the care they need. On the other hand, this is just not something that comes down from the top. This is very much something we've all got to do. And I think in the fires we discovered a lot about being neighbours again. And I think we now need to be very conscious about being good neighbours at a local level and a broader level in the country, and looking out for people. We have a responsibility, all of us now, to make sure that each other are travelling well.
And when you mention the fires, there are so many people that were hit so hard, and they were such the focus of the national attention, and now there's this concern that they might be forgotten, as there is this focus on economic recovery, on coronavirus. What do you think we could be doing to make sure we don't forget them?
Yeah, it is another concern. Amongst all the phone calls and contact we've made over the last 2 months has been speaking to the mayors of the communities that have been affected by the bushfires, plus a number of the volunteer rural fire service leaders, just to check how they're travelling as well. I think everyone has a sense that these communities have had a double whammy, where they took the savage blow from the fires, were looking to recover, haven't been able to do that because of the pandemic. There's been a variety of responses to that, but I think on the whole, how the community stuck together during the fires has continued, and that's a great strength. If we can get, as restrictions are lifted, investment back into those economies, visitors and so forth, being mindful about how they might feel about people coming, that's important. But we just can't take our eye off them. So from my perspective, Linda, and my perspective, as soon as we are allowed to travel more freely, our first port of call will be going to areas we didn't reach, first of all, and then revisiting areas in their recovery process. I know we won't nationally let them go, but there's been very little focus on them over the last 2 months, which is, I think they need to have that.
And you're also quite passionate advocate for Australia's Indigenous communities, and there has been concern about how they've been faring at this time. They already have worse health outcomes generally, can be more isolated. What do you think we need to be doing to make sure Indigenous Australians are supported?
Well, I think the first thing is to ensure that infection doesn't get into those communities. So that's, like many things, a two-edged sort of weapon, in the sense by isolating them further could make service delivery more difficult, but we need to protect their health. And because in those remote communities, it takes a while to get medical care on a normal basis. If we were to be inundated with cases out there, that would be extremely difficult for us nationally, I would think. So protect them, first of all, make sure they're preserved. Again, then look at the programs that are in place, making sure that they're adequately resourced and being put into play, and listen to their needs, listen to their voice, which is really critical.
When it comes to the mental health aspect, I know you touched on it before, but it is such a critical issue, in particular for men. We know they're not as happy to be speaking about their feelings a lot of the time, and it can have really bad impacts on their mental health. What's your work been like in this area? I know you've been speaking to men's sheds, and what can we be doing in the recovery?
I was told yesterday we had a national first for a Governor-General. I actually made a podcast.
Yeah.
Amazing.
How did that go?
It was very good.
Yeah.
Talking to Paul Sladden, the chair of the National Association for Men's Sheds, and Aaron Kearney on radio. They've done a great job in moving from the physical world to the virtual world. Taught a lot of older folks, I think, a few skills they didn't know they had or had to learn about staying connected, but really driving that message home. And I think that's been really important, because fundamentally MedShed is about staying connected and checking on each other and having that opportunity to chat. So it's a good model. Men are a bit reluctant to talk about some of these issues, and we've just got to keep just getting that message out there. There's no weakness in this. If you're not feeling well and you want to have a chat with someone, go and do it. Put your hand up and go and do it. It's just so critical. And there are good programs out there, good organisations, from Beyond Blue to the Black Dog and so forth, that really, they're there for you with open arms, and just go and say hello and have a chat.
Now, we know that Her Majesty was speaking to the Prime Minister. Have you been talking to her about Australia's position during the coronavirus crisis?
No, I haven't spoken directly to her, but I've written to her just to update her after the bushfires, what we were doing, and then more recently about how things were going over here.
Do you think we can expect maybe another royal visit in the in the year to come, given the recovery we're experiencing?
Look, I wouldn't be surprised. As was in the media earlier on, there was talk about some coming over. We'll wait and see. Again, it's when can you travel will be the big issue here.
Absolutely. So in the recovery process for Australia, this can likely stretch on for months, if not over a year, that we'd still have these social distancing measures in place. What do you think is the most important thing for Australians to keep in mind?
Well, the constraints are put there for a reason. There's good data to support them. Understand that, and just do your best to follow it. I think it is tempting sometimes to say, oh, we can just step out of that, but you are putting not only yourself at risk, but other people at risk. So just do what we're being asked to do and comply as best you are capable. Be on a lookout for each other, as I said before. Just be good neighbours in a very broad sense at the present time. Keep yourself fit and well, and if you do feel, any of the symptoms, cold, flu or whatever, get yourself tested because you reduce the risk to other people. And just be sensible about how we go about our normal life at the present time, I think. I don't have young children, so I don't have the issues of dealing with education at the present time. Mine are all in their 30s, but I do have a little grandson who we've just been able to see for the first time in 5 weeks, so that's been lovely.
Oh, wow.
So, again, I think just be mindful of how you're looking after yourself, your family and your neighbour, and we'll get through this from that health perspective.
Governor-General David Hurley, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Annelise.